Thank you. There we go. Thank you. So good to be here with you all. And very moving end to Doreen's section, as always. Hard act to follow, that one, definitely. And yeah, estrogen through the roof, as you said, definitely. Thank you for that. So sometimes there's a question that's been asked during the week that's come up several times in various forms, and this week is no exception. And I was asked on Sunday this week earlier, what makes a belief a belief? You know, what's the difference between a thought and a belief? You know, those kind of thoughts that seem to pull our attention and seem to, we don't seem to have a choice. Attention just goes with that thought, and then we get caught up in it, and it becomes a very negative experience very quickly. So when I was answering this question on Sunday, it occurred to me that it might be useful to kind of explore it a bit more, because it's something that really, like anything that I've experienced with my own awakening, once I really understood it, why it was happening, it was much easier to let it go and to move away from it. So what is the difference between, when is a thought just a thought that we can watch come and go? And when does that thought be a belief? What's the difference between the two? So the word belief indicates that it's been given some importance, some kind of specialness, this idea, this particular thought. And because of that, it's given some extra relevance. So I really wanted to look at why we do that, how we do that as human beings, and what can we do to step away from that quicker and easier, because most of the awakening journey is really sort of disentangling ourselves from these ideas that we've believed for so long. And of course, the biggest idea of all, the biggest belief of all, is that we stepped away from God, from the divine, from our real nature. Somewhere back in our history, we stepped away. And that has become such a fundamental belief that we are literally experiencing that at every moment, feeling separate to everyone and everything. And that was barely tolerable for me my whole life. But then when it came to the divine, my real nature, feeling separate to that, realizing that's what I've been searching for, it was unbearable. Absolutely. I'm sure you've experienced as well this kind of intense longing. Just, I have to find my way back. And it took me so long to get around this belief that I actually had to find my way back, this idea that I'd separated off in the first place. So what is it that makes these thoughts a belief? For me, when I really looked at that and I really kind of zoomed in on it, there was really two things that became a lot clearer. And the first one was that they were my thoughts. This was the idea that was going around in my mind, that whatever's going through my head, they are my thoughts. And it seemed so kind of obvious that it didn't even bear questioning at first. Because if these are my thoughts, then they're automatically given a relevance that other thoughts wouldn't be, right? If they're mine, then they're actually talking to me, and they're definitely not talking to anybody else. They're mine, they're relevant to me, and to ignore them or avoid them would be detrimental. So goes the thinking. And then this whole set of thoughts is given this kind of relevance. Excuse me. I'm just getting over COVID, so might be a little bit of coughing. This whole set of thoughts is given this relevance that didn't have before this label of me and mine appeared. So As soon as there's this idea of a separate being, then this idea of me and mine comes into existence, and everything that's given the label mine, belongs to me, etc., is given this relevance. So this is, of course, mine, my body, my thoughts, my mind, same thing really, my emotions, my karmic patterns, my relationships, all of that. Suddenly it has this extra relevance. And because of this label, mine, these are mine, attention goes automatically to these thoughts that are labeled mine. Could it even be that simple label of these are mine that gives attention no other choice but to go straight to this thought and look at it? And that there seems to be no other way around that whilst this label mine is in place there. And so looking at this, I had to begin to investigate, are they really my thoughts? And it seemed a little bit insane to even ask that question, because going around in my head, in this body which is mine, as was the belief at the time. So it seemed a little daft to even try to investigate if they were actually my thoughts. But nonetheless, it became clear that that's where the attention needed to go. And I began to do some self-inquiry, as we've done before. We can do some later, to try to find this me that we're saying mine, these are mine. And of course, eventually I realized I couldn't find it, and had to look at this over and over again, that there wasn't a me in the way that I thought, or that more clearly perhaps this me was actually a bunch of thoughts about thoughts. Thought is saying, these are my thoughts. And it all gets a little sticky from there. So if this label wasn't here of mine, how do you think your relationship would be different with thoughts than it is now? If they were just thoughts, like cars passing by on the street, rather than something that I need to immediately go to and reference as a source of information. If they were just thoughts, like clouds in the sky or people walking past, and they weren't my first go-to resource because they didn't have this my label, mine, on it, how would your life be different? And would you be able to believe anything? Would you have a belief then? Could you have a belief if there isn't this me and mind thing going on inside you? If there's just a body and there's just thoughts happening and maybe emotions or something like that, could you have this same kind of automatic paying attention to these particular thoughts? It began to look like this. It gave me a little bit of distance from them. But maybe they're not actually mine. Maybe they are just thoughts. And maybe it's the my label that kind of is like super glue, and they straight to that, and you can't seem to unpick it without undoing this label. And the second reason that they really seemed like my thoughts, that they really seemed like something I needed to immediately pay attention to, was that they seemed to be tailor-made to my experience. So whatever my current experience was, these thoughts seemed to be writing the perfect, if I asked someone to pick up a pen and describe what was going on in my experience, it would be exactly what these thoughts are saying. So it was a thing of saying, well, how could they not be my thoughts if they are absolutely spot on with what's going on in my experience? How can I possibly step away from them? They must be a relevant source of information, because here they are describing exactly what's happening right for me in this moment. Or, you've messed it up again. You've forgotten what you're supposed to be doing. you know, you're not good enough, and all of these thoughts that were kind of going on in my mind at the time. And again, it seemed really ludicrous to even begin to consider they might not be my thoughts. It might not be anybody's thoughts, because they were a literal narrative of what was going on moment by moment. Like somebody was in my head and sort of watching what was going on. And again, after a certain amount of time, I began to realize I could investigate this. Why are these thoughts so completely on the nose about what's happening in my experience? Are these thoughts describing my current experience as I think they are? Or are these thoughts just thoughts that happen to be sticking around in my head, hanging around between my ears? And my experience, instead of being something that is just randomly happening, my experience is a reflection of these thoughts, an extension of these thoughts. And as I began to figure this out in this way, investigate in this way, it became a lot clearer that they're not really my thoughts at all. And the only relevance that they have to my experience, the reason they seem to be so spot on, is because my experience is a reflection of those thoughts in any moment. And it also began to become clear that maybe my thoughts didn't really have anything to do with what was going on, that there might be several different ways I could see any particular experience that was happening. And I was just picking out of habit, perhaps the most negative one, the one that was the story that was most, that showed me in the least positive light, let's just say. So when these two things really hit home, then for me, it gave me this ability to step back from my mind. And these two things really helped me undo this me and mine label, because anything that belongs to me is going to follow me around, whether I like it or not. 2 a.m., you know, you're trying to sleep, and there's this all stuff going on. Conversation that happened 10 years ago, your mind's still talking about it and trying to make it better than it was, a better outcome for you rather than the other person, or something like that. So this me and mine label is really only hinging on these two things, this belief in this entity called me, in which the whole mind is hanging on to that. So one thought, and the whole human mind is hanging on that one thought. That one thought is that there's a me, a separate me here. That how it seems to be is actually how it is. And it was astonishing when I realized this, that what that separate being is that I thought I am is actually just a thought. There's an idea that there's a believer of thoughts. This is like revolutionary when I saw this, you know, that there is a belief in a believer. When that was activated, there's someone here believing these thoughts, and the whole of my mind just stuck to me like glue, completely impossible to get any peace. So I began to question this. Is there really a believer? Can I find a believer of thoughts? And what happens when I see through that idea that there isn't really any entity here that's believing these thoughts? Again, how does my relationship change then with thoughts? And it really made it impossible to believe anything. I was going to say in one foul swoop, it was all gone, but it took me a while to apply this in certain areas of my life. It didn't just kind of stop overnight. But I realized wherever I was suffering, it was from this idea that there's a believer, that there's someone to whom the mind is talking, if you want to get straight to the point. What if my mind was just talking in empty space? And that really revolutionized everything. Because then you can't take ownership of it then. If there isn't anyone here, there's just a body, and there is the self, capital S, the infinite being, God, the divine, then even this most valued idea that I have to get back to God, I have to find my way back. And with that comes the other thought that I'm not deserving of that. I'm never going to deserve constant, effortless peace and union with the divine. If that idea begins to fall away, then all that remains is you, peace, clarity, joy, love, passion, all of those things. More energy, more focus, more joy, all of that begins to come in plentiful supply. So we can do this by self-inquiry. We can really look and see, try to find a believer. We can do it right now. There's a body. You can do it with me if you want to. There's a body here. Is there anything other than? Is there any person to whom they belong? Can we find any entity to whom that thought, that mind belongs? Is there really a believer? There seems to be. There seems to be someone here that's really having trouble pulling away from thoughts. But if we actually look, do we find any such entity? And as we look like this, something amazing begins to happen. There is, in that looking, our relationship, even if we don't find anything, any person, our relationship with thoughts changes. If you watch, you try to find a believer, there's just this empty space that's being scanned, and a human body. Empty space being our real beingness, the God that we are trying to get back to, is already here. And thoughts then just become, they lose their specialness, they lose their magnetic attraction. They're just things like everything else, without this specialness of me and mine in that. So let's just do this for 10 minutes. I can see, Melissa, I'll come to you in 10 minutes or so. Let's just sit in 10 minutes or so in meditation and see if we can just watch these thoughts. If we can just be that space in which thoughts are just coming and going. And of course, attention might go to some of those thoughts. And it's okay, just watching them come and go. What happens if they're not your thoughts? They're just thoughts. What happens then? Let's just sit for a few minutes and we'll be the watching. We'll be the space, the silent space that's watching. In that silent space that is you, there's your body, the sense perceptions going on. And there is emotions maybe. And just watching these thoughts come and go. What if they don't have any magnetic center to be drawn to? There's just you, the greater space of being. Who will these thoughts cling on to, or will they just carry on straight through? They come and they go. Just watching, gently watching, waiting for a thought. It will arise and then it will disappear. And we're just being that watching. We are unaffected whether thoughts are there or not, because we're just watching. So just allowing them to come and go. If you follow one of them for a while, it's okay. Just coming back to letting them come and go. We don't need to be doing anything at all with them. Same with our body, just letting that be. Just being the watching itself. And from time to time, just refocusing on being the watching. Watching senses play out, watching emotions. Watching how the body is. If it's hot or cold or comfortable or uncomfortable. Noticing that everything just kind of has this isness to it. Thoughts are just here or not. So we're literally just being that watching. Naturally, we don't get involved. Thoughts are just phenomena like rain, like trees. They're just coming and going. There's nothing to do here. No relationship with our thoughts, just watching them come and go. So we're just being here with these thoughts. They're losing their specialness. From time to time, you may find that you have paid attention to a sound or to an emotion or sensation or a thought. And that's okay, just being the watching. So let's just rest here for a few moments, enjoying how it feels to just be this watching. Just allowing the thoughts to come and go. They don't have any more specialness than anything else. So whenever you're ready, if you want to, you can open your eyes. And if you do, let's just continue to, as we go through the rest of this time together, let's see if we can simply remain watching, even as we begin to engage again. If we are speaking, moving, let's see if we can continue to just be that watching. So I can see Laurel's got a hand up. Just want to check with Melissa. Did you want to say something, Melissa?
No, I will ask. Thank you. I feel like I'm trying to listen with my heart. Yeah. And there's like this epic battle in my head going, there's just you. What is this self? And I don't know that there's an answer to this. I just think it's going to be time and just keep going through it. Like, yeah.
Yeah, just noticing that battle. You don't have to, it doesn't have to be your job to fix that, does it?
Okay.
What happens if you just let that happen? If there's this kind of noise going on, can you feel, if you're just being with that, just watching that, maybe this isn't something you need to fix, even need to sort out. Maybe that is being the self, or being, sort of listening from the heart, is just, I'll just let that happen. I don't need to charge in there and sort it out. Do you feel you can do that? You can just relax around that going on.
I feel like that's what I have to do now. I feel like that's what's left.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We've tried to sort that out for so long, haven't we?
Yeah.
It never worked for me. Thank you. Laurel? Hi.
Hi. So thoughts are going through my mind about my cat, and I had been at peace with a decision to let her go and be with somebody else that could hopefully retrain her, rehabilitate her. And then I found that that was not possible, that they would put her down. They would not rehabilitate her. So now I'm looking at that. And the first constructive thing was I said, how would Helen think about this? And I thought she would say, why don't we look at this 180 degrees differently than how you're looking at it? And how I was looking at it was, I'm going to kill my best friend and my beloved. And the opposite to that was she really would like to go to heaven. And
Wow.
that really brought a lot of peace to me. So but that to me now, that is such a different decision than letting her go to somebody else. This is her life and death that I'm making a decision about. And that's a belief that I have, that's more intense. And I get it, that's just a belief. But I'm struggling with that belief, and just saying it is a belief because it keeps returning. And I keep seeing a picture of her not alive in my lap.
Yeah.
And then I'm just in tears. And I just wondered, how might you think about that, or not think about it, or be with that?
I have been with that decision many times, seeming decision over my life. You know, a cat lover also, and whether it's a cat or a dog or whatever, it's never easy. And for me, the choice came down to I will act upon this choice if it feels right. So if I have to think my way through the process and come to a logical decision, that's one thing. But if I can come to a very heartfelt decision that feels right, whatever that is, then that's going to be, of course, it's still going to be a horrible thing to go through. But if it's happening with a sense of this is the right thing to do, a real knowing, and maybe even a sense that this is what she wants as well, as you said. So can you sit with that and just kind of ask, I'd like to know what the right thing is, you know, rather than trying to, of course, thought has a function, and there's nothing wrong with that. But rather than me feeling I have to choose, can I simply look and sit with this? And it doesn't have to take long, of course, if she's suffering, but I'd like to know with a clarity of conviction that this is the right thing. Because if I'm going to have to walk into the vets and say, this is what needs to happen, I'd like to at least know that this is the right thing with a certainty. So it's more of a kind of an opening and a waiting and a looking rather than trying to figure it out. Maybe you already intuitively know the right decision. You just like a little bit more firmness in that, so that you can, because there's nothing worse than afterwards going, did I do the right thing? That's we've all been there, haven't we, as pet lovers? And so that knowingness, that this absolutely is, and then later was the right thing, is going to give you such comfort in those times. So just rather than what really feels terrible is trying to figure it out. It's all on me to figure it out. I've got to make this horrible decision. And your body might be the one that takes her to wherever this needs to happen, if it happens. But we don't have to have that heavy feeling that I made this decision, I chose this. It can feel even like one of my cats, he, before this happened, you know, he was very ill, and he just kind of looked me right in the eyes. The vet was asking me what I wanted to do, and he was just like, he was saying, yeah, go on, it's okay, you know. And it felt more like a mutual. I know it sounds crazy, but
no, I believe that. Yeah.
yeah,
I get that.
but it had this, it's not all on me. It felt like the right thing. And some deeper part of me just absolutely knew that. And then it could happen. So just sitting and like, can I really let this thing be a certainty? Because it's important, obviously. Does that help too?
Mm-hmm. Yes. And that when I had that thought that that's what she wants, or even just that's her soul wants that.
Yeah.
Because I think she would keep going. I think of, there's nothing that's terrible happening for her. But I think deeper down, she's living with a lot of fear.
Yeah.
And that's not, she doesn't need to keep doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You did the right thing there. You kind of realized intuitively that the story that you had about it perhaps wasn't the best way you could be looking at it, and you opened up for a higher perspective, and that was really, really good. And then that perspective can come with even more certainty, just a total knowing. So there's no doubt. That's really what we want to be free of, isn't it, in this kind of thing?
Yes. Yeah.
And that can happen very quickly, really.
Yeah, I already know the answer. I just need the certainty. Yeah.
Just the recognition that I can even ask for that. I don't have to kind of work through some logical thought process, because that's not going to get you there anyway, is it, if it's the end of a thought process? Again, nothing wrong with thoughts, but it's not the same as this heartfelt knowing. Wonderful.
Thank you.
And whatever, you've both had this blessed life together, haven't you, wherever it goes from here?
Yes.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Thank you.
A lot of love. Yeah.
Love you too.
Thank you.
Marisol?
Hi, Helen.
Hi, how are you doing?
Good. It's been a long time.
It has, yeah. You're looking very good.
Oh, thank you. You too.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to say that this teaching has landed very deeply within. And even right now, because I'm watching how thoughts are popping up very quickly, and body sensations like nervousness or anxiousness, and trying to just look at that with what I wrote down from what I got from this inquiry that you brought up. So, when you were asking, or when you were bringing up about my thoughts, and looking at the attachments to my thoughts, it's a new way of looking at this for me, which I feel like that's why it landed so deeply. And definitely I started questioning while you were teaching, and definitely I saw that there's a belief that the thoughts that arise define who I am as a person, what my life is about. Because when I started looking at the thoughts that started popping up in my head, telling me what's going on, who I am, for a second, I was able to kind of see it as, with my daughter right now, my teenage daughter, I'm trying to help her through letting go of certain thoughts. And when they arise in her, I'm not attached to them. So I can easily see how false they are.
Yeah.
That's why I said, well, why can't I do that with me? Which is then why it came up with, because I'm believing it's defining who I am. All these thoughts that come up, or the emotions that are attached to it. So
that's a big, heavy thing to carry, isn't it? That what I'm thinking is me, right? My definition is of myself is susceptible to whatever's going on in my head, and it's an awful place to kind of hang out.
It really is. And I really loved when you said that when the thoughts are just playing, it's just basically, it's like a narration, like the mind speaking what it already knows in empty space. So that really helped a lot.
Good.
I just wanted to really thank you for that.
Good. I'm glad it helped, because it seems like forever we've been caught up in these thoughts, isn't it? And sometimes just something someone says, a little nugget of something that helps you just kind of move back from the intensity of it, and just to see it's not really my stuff, it's just stuff going on here, and I don't need to let it dictate how I'm going to feel or any of that, right? I'm just going to let it be.
It's just tricky when the emotion rises up so quickly, like it is right now. Like
Yeah.
it's just automatic, and then it's harder. I'm not saying it, obviously it's not impossible. You've been able to do it, where it's like the emotion is so strong that it's like sticking its claws in even deeper within, like saying, you see, this is really happening because it's happening in your body right now.
Yeah.
I can see that it's just all, I'm really looking forward to putting this into practice. So
Even if there's a strong emotion, like we could say right now, and some strong emotion comes up, and might even be a sense of overwhelm, or just it's just kind of, it's too big or something like that, this emotion, we can still watch that sense too, can't we? Like this sense of I didn't deal with that emotion very well, or something was resisting it, didn't want it. So there's the emotion and the resistance to it just going on, and I don't need to kind of take ownership of that process. It's not me that's resisting, or it's not my resistance, or is it just resistance going on along with the emotion? Can you feel the difference in that when you, it's different feeling then, isn't it? There's an intensity of it, but it's not taken to be necessarily yours, or something that you have to do it. Because if it's not yours, do you have to do anything about it? And can you do anything about it then? Or is there just a kind of a watching, even of the intensity of the emotion? You feel the difference in how it's handled, how it's held.
yeah, definitely, because it's all practicing of, even though it's arising and there's a thought that wants to latch on saying, this is you,
Yeah.
I can step back and even observe that.
Yeah. Something's trying to, there's the resistance and there's the emotion, and something's trying to desperately do something with it.
Yes.
Like, do I push it away? Do I accept? What do I do with this thing that's happening? And that's just the kind of impersonal mechanism that goes on in every human body, isn't it? Something kicks into gear and says, I don't like this, I don't want this. Or how do I get rid of this? What do I do with it? And again, it's just something that's as impersonal as anything, because everyone has that mechanism. They're just looking at, okay, an emotion arises, and then there's this automatic thing afterwards. They're trying to push it away if it's a negative, or if it's peace or bliss, there's something that tries to hold on to it. And that's always kind of going on, but I don't need to take ownership of that so much.
Right. Yeah, that's the key, because it's like I see the desire of making it, I just lost the word, of just making it who I am, or defining who I am, or
Yeah.
it's just something that's arising that I don't have to latch on to or make up a person out of it, or me out of it. So,
and that's always, as you begin to realize, that option's always available, even if it seems like it isn't, it's still there if I look for it. It's just absolutely whatever is happening to my mind and body is just happening. I can just be with that.
thank you.
Thank you. Wonderful. Okay. Would anyone else like to? Oh, Sina, you got your hand.
Yeah, I'm just, what I hear you saying is that, hold on. What I hear you saying is that there is no believer. The believer is yet another thought that the mind created. And with this thought, believer, the ego's a thought too, but the believer thought, it came from probably language, maybe, that I believe, fill in the blank.
Yeah.
And then all the other beliefs that come, well, they're like offshoots of the thought believer.
Yeah.
I remember it was a couple months back, and I'm so glad you're talking about this again, because it's bringing the inquiry I was practicing and felt such relief with, is this question I was asking myself: who or what would I be without the believer?
Yeah.
That was my question.
Yeah.
And every single time, without fail, the felt sense in my body was absolute pure relief, release, joy, that spaciousness, that emptiness that is full.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I can see how the attachment first to that thought of the believer, that the believer exists. And then, of course, like what you were saying, the identification comes when the my comes into play.
Yeah.
And so if I've identified with those thoughts, like my mind, my thoughts, there's where the believer is activated.
Mhm.
And something about that activation, it needs constant, like, getting fed, or else it falls apart. And how we feed the believer, this thought believer, is with all those thoughts, like that narration that's happening constantly for really no reason. I mean, most of the times it's saying, yeah, sky is blue. I don't need to, obviously it's there. So I'm just saying this out loud, just kind of to really get it deep inside myself about this believer mechanism, that the ego, it feels like an offshoot of the ego.
Yeah. Yeah.
And how I stay stuck, because as long as I'm identifying with the believer, I'm identifying with the thoughts. Because without the believer, look, the thoughts have nothing to hold on to. What are they going to cling to? So
you literally cannot identify without a believer, can you?
that's why I felt such relief and release every time I would say, who am I without the believer? It's like, I'm still here. So there was this disidentification occurring when I would feel more like, it was like, and not feeling like an emotion. It wasn't emotion. It was just this felt sense of like, yes, I'm here. Yet, thoughts were still coming and going, but yet it's just seeing I'm not that. There's something powerful about seeing I'm not the believer. And a lot of my energy and attention was going into that, into the believer. So without that attention going there, it's back here now.
Yeah. And it's peace, then it turns into peace, doesn't it? That energy, it's felt, because that narration is that you were talking about, it's the constant reinforcing of the idea of the believer constantly, isn't it? It's always doing that. It's always trying to shore itself up, so to speak, or else it falls apart. And as you said correctly, that takes so much energy constantly. And you can hear when you're talking sometimes, can't you, that this is justification, it's verification of a someone. And that just has a life of its own, because it's fed on the power from the self and given this idea that it exists, and then it's got a mind it's troubled with, and all of these things it needs to deal with, which again verifies its existence again, and it goes around and around. So just that's a powerful question, isn't it? Who am I without this? Or if I'm not this believer, or if there isn't one. And then there's just this quietness that happens, or that is, should say, and this spaciousness where thoughts are just floating around it. Inside that, then even the thought, I am the believer, it has no power then in that.
It feels like the thoughts themselves, believed enough, become beliefs, but then that's the building blocks of the believer.
Yeah.
So it's like the one fortifies the other, and it's a loop that I feel like we can get out of once we realize we're not the believer. So thank you, Helen, and love that you're here with us.
Thank you. And you phrased that so well. Thank you. And seems like a good place to leave it there for tonight, today, whatever time it is. But that, what Sina just said there is, I don't know what time it is wherever you are, is the pinnacle for me, just to wrap this up. That was the huge thing, that questioning the believer, as we did before we went into meditation. Anytime I found I could go back to that question, that openness of that question, who am I without this is beautiful, or is there really a believer, really helped me. Because the whole illusion is stuck on that one idea. Yes, it seems extraordinarily real, but with a believer comes a doer, a decider, a thinker, and all of the rest of it. Someone who's trying to awaken. Everything else is all stuck on that. So it does seem to be what it was for me, the most important thing. So thank you for having me again, and I've really, really enjoyed it. Hope you have too. Thank you. Namaste.